Hi, this is Nizam here at 47 Akbar Street. Recently, our RBI governor Raghuram Rajan was in the news again. This time, he was actually challenging his critics. Well, actually, by critics, he means bhaks and also one single bhakt. You know who I mean, this guy here. Raghuram Rajan thinks that inflation in India is not as low as it is being made out to be. But his critics think that inflation has actually reached a low point, so much so that they want the bank interest rates to be lowered so that India's GDP pulls higher and there is a lot more economic activity happening. We are not here to judge one way or the other. We're just trying to see what is actually the relationship between inflation and bank interest rate. Before we go there, do we know what inflation is? I think we all have a fairly good idea as to what inflation is all about. In any economy, the prices of all goods and services increases over a period of time. That is basically what inflation is. To put it in even simpler terms, maybe last year you bought a box of chocolates for 100 rupees. It's mostly certain that this year that box of chocolates is going to cost you around 110 rupees, which means the box of chocolate has gone through an inflation of 10% over the period of 1 year. But then, a government can't calculate inflation based on just a box of chocolate. So what do? They cannot certainly go after all the goods and services produced in the country. That would be really maddening and time consuming. To save the government all that craziness, what they do is they actually take this basket of representative products and then they just track the prices of that basket alone. Various countries have various products in their basket. In India, this basket is actually comprised of 3 products. One is the primary articles, including the food. The second one is the fuel and power. And the third one is the manufactured products, which includes mining industry, the manufacturing industry, automobiles, textiles, etc. Basically, it's like roti, kapda, makan or petrol. In India, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry is responsible for calculating and publishing the inflation numbers from time to time. Prior to 2009, these numbers used to be published on a weekly basis, just like the weekly collection amount at a box office. But then after 2009, it's been published on a monthly basis. This has actually reduced the impact of inflation numbers on the Sensex to a certain level. So much talk about the economic activity and we have actually not gone into the mathematics part of it at all. Sorry guys, we are going to be doing that just right now. So how does one actually measure inflation? There are 2 formulas that generally are used in this calculation. One is the WPI, Wholesale Price Index, and the other one is the CPI, Consumer Price Index. Before 2014, India used to publish the WPI numbers. Recently, India has started publishing a combined CPI-WPI number. It all gets very confusing when you go into the mathematics part of it, and that's not the scope of this video at all. So let's not go there. Let's just believe that just like in cricket, the Duckworth-Lewis system is used every time rain happens. Not everyone understands how it actually works, but then somebody tells us, okay, these are the numbers. We believe it, and then we go ahead with it until it comes back to haunt us again, just like it keeps haunting South Africa in a lot of rain-affected matches. We will leave it at that. So what about this bank interest rate? Why has the RBI governor actually coupled inflation with the bank interest rate? Let us take this example of this guy who one fine morning takes up the newspaper and sees this realty ad for an apartment for 30 lakhs. It says that the apartment is exactly 12 kilometers from the airport, 3 kilometers from the railway station, and the supermarket is right inside his kitchen itself. And if you jump outside the balcony, you land in this top-ranking engineering college, which is actually promising your unborn child a job on the day of the admission. And mind you, you're still single. All this for just rupees 30 lakhs. So the guy is super pumped. He really wants to buy this place. So he calls up the banks and figures out that the home interest rates are quite low. The bank interest rates are quite low at this point. So he does a little bit of calculation and he figures that over a 20-year period with such low bank rates, he can actually manage the EMIs. So he immediately calls the builder to book the apartment right away. Life seems beautiful. Actually, no, it's not. Life is quite terrible. The builder who had advertised the apartment for 30 lakhs is now actually asking for 40 lakhs. What happened? During the time that this guy was actually looking for the bank interest rate and also doing the calculation, there were 1,000 more guys just like him who also figured that at such low bank interest rates, they can also own a piece of paradise. So they all called the builder. Do you see what happened? With so much demand coming in, the builder actually jacked up the price. So this is actually just a very simple example of how when the bank interest rate is low, inflation happens. Now let's look at it from the other end of the argument. Let's say that the bank interest rates are low, which means that the economic activity happening in the country is really high, just like what the critics are claiming. The GDP is going high, There is amazing employment numbers. A lot of people are earning a lot more. Incomes are high. Everyone is happy. Life is beautiful again. Actually, no. Even here, we are wrong. It's not. It's quite terrible. Do you know what happened in 2010 when the RBI and the Indian government at that point decided to be like Amrish Puri of DDLJ and said, Simran, ja, ji le teri zindagi. Simran actually went ahead, lived her zindagi to the fullest and screwed everyone's happiness. What happened? What am I talking about? Can you guess what the inflation numbers for that year were? Take a wild guess. 11%? No. 12%? No. Keep going. 13%? No. Certainly must be at least 14%. No, 16.22%. That's a huge number to be called inflation. Can you imagine how a common man's household, which does not even see 2 to 3% rise in income, going to meet the 16.22% inflation? Mathematically and realistically, it's just not possible at all. What are the low and middle income groups going to do? They're going to start cutting corners. They're going to start budgeting a lot more. But that is not living. That is just surviving. And the government of the day has it upon itself to provide a good living to its citizens while providing opportunities for a better future. I guess it was precisely this line of thinking that actually got our present government and the RBI governor to set a target for inflation. They have set it up as 4% to be achieved by 2017. We're actually on the way to getting there. RBI governor Raghuram Rajan certainly thinks so. And in the last 2 years, we've actually seen inflation climb down slowly. In 2014, inflation was around 7%. In 2015, it actually went down to 4.5%. But then because of a whole lot of issues with price rise in the food sector, it is actually back to 6.5% in the last few months. But then we are getting there. It's slowly decreasing. It's not as high as it was earlier. Meanwhile, the bank interest rate, which was at 8% in 2014, has come down to 6.5% now. It's not like the RBI has not reduced the bank interest rate at all, like the critics are claiming. It's just that it is doing it at a very slow rate with a tight leash. It's just like a loving parent, having had gone through a bad experience earlier, keeps a tight leash on your pocket money so that Simran does not go ahead and lead her zindagi to the fullest and screw everyone's happiness again. It is, of course, rather stupid to think that just by controlling the rate of interest, you're going to be controlling the inflation rate completely. No, it's not. Inflation actually depends on a lot more factors. The global economy comes into play, the recession in other countries comes into play, the monsoon, how well the monsoon happens, that comes into play, and also the supply and demand actually makes a lot of difference to inflation numbers. And of these, which do you think our RBI governor has complete control over? Certainly, he really cannot influence the vote of a UK Englishman as to how he votes in Brexit. And certainly he cannot control how much rain will fall this monsoon season. But the one thing that he has complete control over is the bank interest rate, which is what he's actually doing. Hope all this made sense. At 47 Akbar Street, we are all about pro common sense. If you like this video, please like, share, comment, and do subscribe to 47 Akbar Street channel over here. This is Nizam signing out. Jai Hind.